Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Noor Podcast. We are on episode 7 today, and Bijin has a mystery topic for us, and he's going to be going through and telling us. So, yeah, our reactions are quite raw to this.
Yes, they don't know what it is. The title of the episode is The Indian Effect.
Oh, okay.
What a coincidence.
I'm
It's not related to your background or anything, is it?
I am Indian, by the way, so you
Alright.
can't call me a racist.
Hopefully, no one does.
No. It's just it's about the influence of it's an observation on the prevalence of Indian people, whether they are citizens of India or just immigrants that have roots back to India, and their prevalence in the world of business, education, and economics and finance. And there's just it's very interesting statistics, and we're just going to go through some of those statistics, what they mean, what the underlying reason might be, based on my own experience and what I've seen as well, and kind of what lessons we can take away and apply. But yeah.
Can I ask a question? How did you come with this topic?
How did I come up with this topic?
It's because I want the audience to know that you're not trying to sell a pride. We are talking about the cause of the success.
Sure, yes. I'm not trying to be prideful of the fact that I'm Indian. It's great that I'm Indian.
It's good. It's great.
It's also not like it's one of those things where just because I'm Indian doesn't mean that this is guaranteed for me. It's just an observation globally that there is. It's like there was a study done on, and they found that people that work on Firefox or Chrome is more productive at work in business environments than people that work on Internet Explorer. And it's like, if you hear that study, it doesn't mean that if you go and download Chrome or Firefox,
You're going to automatically be productive.
No, what it meant is that people that go out of the way to not just settle for the default and find the optimal solution to something tend to perform better. So trying to chase the outcome, the statistic or the outcome is not going to give you anything. But yeah, that's why it's not about me. It's just an observation. How I came up with it was, I over the course of the last couple of years, I've always heard these statistics, like one here and there, but I haven't heard like a compiled list and heard anyone talk about it before, which is why I have coined the phrase "the Indian effect." Let's see if this goes viral.
Fingers crossed.
And it's just a collection of statistics. So let's get right into it. So how we'll go through it essentially is let's go over the statistics first. And like I said before, there's 3 sections I've split into. So there's education, there is business, and then there's finance, roughly. And it's the 3 areas that these statistics are generally most common. There's a lot of other areas in life, by the way, and a lot of other areas where Indians perform lower, but these are just the ones that they perform higher in. And it's very relevant to the field of entrepreneurship, tech, and business, which is why, and like the corporate world, which is why I wanted to talk about it, because that's kind of a lot of the people we talk to and the themes that we're focused on. And then we'll spend some time talking about why we think these things are the way they are.
We are talking about the reasoning behind it.
Sure.
From a cultural perspective.
Almost. Everyone has access to the statistics.
So the fact is, we're gonna interview you.
Yeah. Sure, absolutely.
As a matter of fact, it's like how Indians get to the place that they are. That from a stereotype, you talk an Indian guy is like, oh, he's in IT or tech or something.
Sure.
So how did it happen?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
why it happened?
And you're right. The statistics are available everywhere. But what I didn't find is the compilation of these statistics.
Correct.
They're very. Like, there's a lot of statistics, and they're all in different areas when they talk about it, but you're going to be very interested.
Okay,
look,
start.
I'll jump right in. So, first of all, like I said before, we're going to go education, business, and then money. Okay?
Sorry, when you say business, just for clearance,
yes.
Is it including the tech as well or not?
Education, business, wealth. Yes, correct.
Okay.
Entrepreneurship, startups.
Okay.
technology.
Because
Everything. You'll see.
okay, sure. All right.
Now, how I'll do it is like we'll just talk about statistic, and I'll explain my thinking behind why I chose that, and what it kind of represents. And the first one, we start off with a little bit of a fun one, okay? So,
I'm sorry to cut you off again. What is the reference? What is your reference of a statistic?
I'm not going to tell you each reference. It's all very publicly available.
Oh, okay.
You can Google it. This is what I was telling Ali just before, okay?
Yep.
We are an entertainment platform.
All right.
We are not an information platform.
No, good.
So it's like, it's casual.
Sure.
I'm going to read this out.
Sure.
You can fact check it.
Sure.
It's all on the internet.
No, it's fine.
So that's kind of what we're going for. Okay, cool. So first statistic. Now, again, starting with education. So I wanted to talk. I actually initially looked up what areas in education and what are indicators that Indian origin, people with Indian origins or Southeastern origins prevail in that space, right? And the first thing that came up, which I see why it came up now, but the first thing that came up is about spelling bees. Okay. Now in America, there is something called the Scripps National Spelling Bee. It's a competition, and it's been running for over 20 years. So in the last 20 years, 21 out of 23 spelling bees was won by someone of Indian origin.
Wow.
Right. And which is quite shocking. And the reason I was reading this article on why that was. And the correlating factor that they found is that Indian parents outspend any other culture's parents on the child's education. And it's not just natural talent. Like, everyone was born the same. It's not just natural talent these Indian kids have, which is the parents prioritize it.
It's artificial.
Yes, but the outcome is still there. You know what I mean? Like, but if I promise you, if you look up a stat for Indians playing sports, you'll see the complete opposite.
Just cricket.
Just cricket. That's my experience growing up. But that was the first one. Yeah. What do you think about it?
I mean, it's true. Because I definitely think like it's, and again, I'm like a next door neighbor. I grew up in Pakistan, was born in Afghanistan, very close. I think it's just the mindset of those sort of parents. They're really like, I didn't have education, I didn't have access to this, so I'm gonna like just push my child to go and study and learn and become smart, and it's also the competitive factor.
Yes,
it's a given thing, especially within like ethnics. It's like, if my kid's a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer and they've got like A's, it's a bragging right.
But it's always, when I grew up, it was always interesting because, I mean, we're specifically talking in high school, right? Or younger. Because I will touch on university in a second, but
even high school. That's
what I'm saying.
Like even high school, they'll give you awards and stuff like that. And then I feel like, especially my parents, they're like, oh, the amount of pride that we get if we go to the assembly and they call you up on stage, they're like, you get an award for this.
Yeah.
Like, I sort of compare it to, you save up money to go buy a car and you want to show off that car.
Yeah.
Or a house. The kids are the exact same thing. Our parents see us as an investment. They're like, I'm going to spend money. So I can at least show it off to some people. Like, this is what I grew.
Yeah.
And this is what I invested money in, sent them to tutors, sent them to the best school out there, and like constantly told them to do their homework so I can show it off to the world.
That's an really interesting mindset. Now I feel really bad that I didn't win more competitions.
Because it really is like our parents, of course, it's what's in their hand is, okay, where am I going to send you? What am I going to spend? It was on us to win those awards. And
it was really interesting because, like, thinking about it, my parents, and I think this is the same story for a lot of people, a lot of Indian people, is that they actually valued education for the sake of education, not education for the sake of making money. Because making money wasn't a huge thing when I grew up. It was actually education and like testing and like being smart and being capable and knowing a lot of information. But they didn't necessarily explicitly care about how that translated into making money. I don't know. I mean, a lot of Indians, we'll go into the next statistic, which is that the median household income for an Indian American family is reported at $119,000 US. This is in America, which is well above the median average of $85,800. which and if you actually look at the graph of, and this data is available publicly, of each ethnicity household, it's pretty like linear. It goes up.
Yeah.
I think the second highest is another Asian country origin, and I think it sits about 10 or 15K lower than Indians. But the delta, like after that, is like 1,000, 2,000. It's very very minimal. So it's kind of like a linear,
and then
just jumps Indians, which is such a like outstanding statistic, because when I was growing up, money was like, everyone had money, but it was never something that like my parents never went, you got to make sure you're rich. No, they went, you got to make sure you're well educated.
What I was going to say a little bit before, and it goes really well with that, is I think it's our parents. Like, yes, money is a big thing, but they knew that if we were well educated, money would come with it. And it's the same thing that with entrepreneurship, right? It's like you wanna help somebody, you do that, and then the byproduct is money. And the same goes with knowledge. They know, like, if you're tertiary smart, you can get a job. Like, as long as you've got that degree, as long as you've got that knowledge, and you're smart enough and you are very intellectual, you can get a good enough job. Yeah, it comes with it. Like, again, banking is all money, but money is numbers. So if you're good at maths, you can do that. And then there's pattern trading and all of that. So as long as you can at least excel in one area and you're quite intellectual, money just naturally flows. So I think that's a great correlation, where it's like, if the parents are focusing so much on their kids to be really smart, excel in all those areas, they're going to end up getting a good job anyways.
I think it reflects back to the Indian education system. Now, the Indian education system is very interesting because it's very cutthroat. You either do really well or you do really bad. There's no medium, and it's very STEM based as well. So I know that because my cousins are from India, and some of them are living with me right now with my parents, and talking to them about how they grew up, it was very STEM focused, so science, technology, engineering, and maths. Very very STEM focused, very small focus on like the arts,
100%,
the history, the language. There is some, but a lot of people know that if you want to do well, you got to pick the STEM subjects. And another major difference, if you with Indian education system compared to here, is that to be able to get into something like medicine or law or engineering, there's a lot of prerequisites in high school. In engineering there is a prerequisite, but a lot of degrees don't have prerequisites, especially the high achieving ones. You can do whatever you want in high school, but in India, you have to pick the STEM subjects if you want to do even a lawyer, like even if you want to do medicine, like whatever.
Because the competition is high, isn't it?
Exactly. And that's the other part. So it's very pushing STEM, and then it's very much pushing competition, because everything is done through competitive exams in India, right? And so think about like what 1 billion people competing against each other. It's very very,
and they make it very public knowledge as well of who's first.
Oh yes.
It's literally like
it's in the newspaper.
Competition all the time.
The newsletters that get sent to the parents, everyone knows whose kid is first, and obviously the parents. So that's another bragging right. But another thing I wanted to add to that was they started off very young. Like you go to high school here, you have no idea what you're going to do. And then year 11 comes around, and you're like, all right, guys, you got to be very serious about it. We're going to have people coming in from the unis to talk to you, and this is where you pick your electives. All right. Why didn't you tell me when I was in year 6?
Yes.
Like, it does add a factor of like stress, but you got to tell these kids at a younger age. Honestly, like you can't just wait until you're 11, and then they've been cruising along.
They can handle it.
They can if you condition them to.
Yes.
You can't just throw it, because that's what I think the education system here. Like, okay, we want to shelter them, we want to keep them safe, and then when they're 17, 18, that's when we'll like throw the real stuff at them because they're young adults. They haven't been conditioned to that. You can't.
Maybe they set it up so that the high school system and the schooling system in general is trying to best reflect the environment in the household as well. And so like if it's you don't want to throw it off completely where it's like it's so super chill at home, you can do whatever you want, and then you come to school and it's very strict, or the other way around. But see, what I was going to lead to was that like this is how it's in India, right? This is how my parents grew up. I'm talking first generation Indians, the ones that immigrated here. This is how my parents grew up, and they don't know any better. So they prepared me for the Indian education system, but then I was here,
which far exceeded the education system here.
Well, yes and no. I think there's benefits here, but I think the way my parents taught me helped me exceed here very well. But if I was back in India, I would not have done well because I'm not a very I don't think I'm competitive enough to do well in India because people in India are very smart.
Well, that's one thing that I've realized, and it's not an actual statistic that anyone can follow, but it's just my assumption and things that I've seen. But like seeing people that just recently migrate to here, and then I compare it to people growing up here, night and day difference. It's literally because they've been conditioned in those areas. It's like the D student over in Pakistan, India is like a B+, A- student here, just because of how cutthroat it is. And one analogy I wanted to put is if you don't know how to use, or like say when you're digging, right? You can have the best resources, but if you don't know how to use those resources, you're still going to be digging with your bare hands. And that's the same thing with like people here is they're too relaxed. They're like, I know I have these resources. I don't care. I have the freedom to dig for the rest of my life, and I'll still have food, water, comfort, whatever. Whereas in those third world countries, it's pretty much like, all right, if I can find a shovel, I'm going to use it to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
So here,
because there's someone else there. That's that's gonna. There's 10
that's gonna take.
there,
yeah, that's gonna utilize it.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. And I'm gonna be left with nothing. Survival of the fittest.
Yeah, it's interesting because, but that also speaks to what I've seen and observed of international students coming here and completing university and then struggling to find a job, because I can see the difference. And just a personal observation is that in India, it makes sense that everything's a numbers game because there's so many people. Like, their population is what if it's
1.2 billion.
Yeah, right. So if you're applying for a job here, think that there's multitudes more people applying there. And so their HR department cannot go through the detail that we can here, which means until you get to the very top, it's a numbers game. It's let's rank you from best to worst, and then we'll pick the top whatever, and then we'll look at them in detail. And so they've been trained on a system where it's a numbers game. So they come here thinking, oh, my grades are great. I have a 7 GPA. Easy. Want to find a job? No problem at all. But then they come here and they can't speak because in India, you don't have to sell yourself.
No.
Your
grades do
it for you.
Yeah.
Here, you come here and you have the best grades, but I can't talk to anyone. Oh, no one wants to hire you because you're not going to fit well in team. You know what I mean?
There was this movie a few years ago, it's an Indian movie. I think it's called 3 Idiots or something like that.
Yeah.
There was this story of these, the guy who attends you've seen the movie.
No, I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it before, yeah.
Is it Amir Khan or something like that? I think
Amir Khan?
Yeah,
Yes.
Amir Khan.
Yeah.
He's the main actor. Again, I might be wrong. You have to double check it. The story of the merit of the story was that everyone was forced to actually attend the university, but this guy attended university in replacement of someone else because he was poor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to burn the whole story of the movie so people can go and watch, but it somehow criticized that system.
I see. Okay.
And it's a different, so it's trying to create a shadow over that. How can we overcome that game of number?
Yeah.
Does that game of number get us anywhere?
Yeah.
At the individual's level,
Yeah.
It's a success story, no doubt about it. But at the society level, is it a success story for everyone? And these are the questions that I often ask myself. You didn't study in those type of systems that it's a game of number.
Oh, you did though.
I did up until just before the year of, right through the middle of year 12. Okay, and then I did migrate before that. If you slightly want to actually think outside the box, then you're done. Your entire life is done. Okay. The other thing is, like, if you just follow the same routes that everyone else is actually going down path, then you're gonna end up getting the same results.
Yeah.
Well, we're living in a time that we are facing with endless possibilities. Okay, so we need more innovators, critical thinkers.
Yeah, it's almost like curiosity is
Curiosity
punished.
is now in those systems is completely punished. And this is my controversy now, because I'm from outside and now looking at it. It's like, and a little bit of a corruption.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about India. I'm talking about the place I come from. Bijin is not a little bit now, it's a lot of corruption in the education system, which then they can fudge the numbers.
Yeah.
So you do, even though you might be really good at those STEM fields, but someone else is richer than you and has more say in the system, they can cheat the system. So you're literally done. Okay. And that is the downside of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And look, the idea that you're talking about, that people are focused and become hardworking, it's an honor to me. So, like, to listen to the story. But it would be much more appealing to me if saying people were not in a competition or race. They were genuinely loving this and were doing it because it was part of their dream, not because I wanted to actually become rich or survive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Please.
We'll touch a bit in a second about how people, you're right, people that grew up in India, as the example, because I'm using India, but then came to Western countries and then thrived there. That's the really interesting numbers. And I think that's like what you said. It's because you built a foundation in a system where it's about competition, about numbers, but then you came to this Western world where it's free and it allowed you to think out of the box. But because you've built that foundation, you're like, the sky's the limit.
It's the best of both worlds.
Yes.
And that's the thing that, like, I sort of have found the comparison between the Western countries and that there is no in between. And I don't know if it's ever going to exist, but they're all on like two different extremes. And that's one thing that has always made me very upset, is that there is obviously the third world countries like India, Pakistan, Iran, and even some first world countries like Korea and stuff. Like, it's purely numbers. And it's purely the fact that you got to be intellectual, you got to be smart, and you got to be the best grades possible, and you're going to excel. And yes, sometimes, like majority of the times in the other countries, creativity is frowned upon, because they have that they have that set model there, and they want you to follow it to the T. As long as you can really navigate your way through it and do the best that you can, they're happy. And your curiosity is punished. The other thing that I find is, and this is purely my own opinion, in Western countries, curiosity is allowed too much. And that's just because human beings, right?
Curiosity without direction, right?
Curiosity without direction allows people to do things that they explore areas that I personally feel like it doesn't need to be explored. But that's just because you've got the comfort, you've got that ability to just sit there and think about whatever that you can. So I feel like if there was like a beautiful combination, how you said, it's like growing up with that numbers sort of mentality, but then being able to very easily transition here and then also embrace what is happening here, and you have the foundation of the right, this is what I got to do, this is what I have to stick to. Then you've got the ability to then now be curious, and you can use your intellectual side to boost your curiosity. It
works well.
It's a beautiful mixture.
And I think that can be emulated with good parenting.
100%.
I think if you raise a child with a focus on discipline and hard work, but then also that sense of competition. But it's tough because there isn't a lot of competition here. And
mainly among communities themselves.
Exactly. Exactly. And so like I remember times when my parents would try to compare me to people that were living in another country because they couldn't compare me with anyone here because there's not that many people. But it's still like at a young age, it still made me go, oh damn, okay, I've
not made them proud.
Yeah. But obviously now going back, and I'm like older, I'm very grateful that I did that. It made me work harder.
Yeah.
But yeah, very interesting. Anyway, I'll jump on to the next one, and this is obviously we talked a bit about high schools and the system there. Now we're just going on to the next phase of life, which is university, right?
Yeah.
It's very interesting talking about universities in India because there is an interesting university culture in India. And well, I come from Kerala, which is right at the bottom of India. And it's very interesting because oftentimes what you see is not just the wealthy families. You don't have to be overtly wealthy to go into a foreign country, because a lot of students can support themselves once they leave. It's just a matter of making sure they have enough money for the visa, the application, the flights. Once they get to the other country, a lot of students can support themselves. But you have to be smart. But what you see in a lot of places like Kerala is that the smartest individuals all leave the country. And so the place is left with the people that aren't the smartest. And so speaking to that as a statistical point of view, it's going to shock you. Okay. So just in India, currently, there are 1 million international students, Indian students abroad in India. There's currently 1 million Indian students that are living abroad in all places of the world. Okay? But within 2025, it's expected to reach 1.5 to 2 million, which means a doubling in 3 years.
For some reason, I thought it was gonna be more.
Even more? Crazy.
Like the initial numbers.
Okay, so and then the big four. Yep. The big four is the US, Canada, UK, and Australia is the big four that people are in. So think about it, 1.5 to 2 million in 2025, around the corner. But then you look at the money numbers. It's very interesting. So that means right now, so on average, international students pay $36,000 a year for uni fees, which means that's $36 billion market value for uni fees, paid by just Indian international students in the world. But that means by 2025, that could jump to $72 billion. Now, this is the bombshell. No pun intended. Do you know how much India spends a year on their defense budget? In 2021, it was $76 billion.
So equivalent of the defense budget goes outside the country.
Yes. Isn't that crazy? But think about a couple of things there. That's how much Indian people value education. Like, they wouldn't go out if the same opportunity was in India, first of all. And not just for education, but also for their future careers. But that's why they go out. So even though there's not any spaces in India, they're willing to pay the same, as a country, the same amount as they pay for defense by 2025 on education.
Outside. Oh, because obviously there's plenty of spending done within the country.
Yes.
But
this is just international students.
Wow.
76 billion. It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
Yeah. And India had I think it was last year, I didn't write the statistic down, but I did read it. It was 3.2 or 3.3 trillion dollar GDP. So it's about 2%, which is India spent 2.5% of their GDP on defense last year, which is 76. But by 2025, they could be spending 2% on education.
Can I be honest? There's a lot of countries that and this is just those reported figures of like students actually getting student visas coming through and studying here. and lots of countries do it, but there's lots of people that obviously are not able to get those visas. So I think it's actually a lot more. I definitely think that's why I was, it was quite surprising to say 1 million.
But it's just India, right?
That's just India. But I think there's I would probably have to say it's probably 1.2, 1.3 at the moment.
I think it's an old statistic.
In terms of people that come here
yeah,
on working visas but end up studying.
Yes.
Because they're forced to.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because and I've run into a lot of people
Yeah.
That, again, everyone's situation is different, and lots of countries do it. Like people from lots of countries, because they're desperate. They know that the resources they're going to have access to here is going to be far better than what they have there. So they're going to risk a lot to do it. But I think, there's lots of people that come on other visas but end up studying here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Well, in Australia, I think China has more international students than Indians. In Australia.
In Australia, yes.
In Australia, yeah. But I think a lot of people go to, I think the US and Canada are the big ones.
Massive.
And UK. Actually, I didn't include this in here, but Germany is pretty big as well. I know a lot of, personally,
Europe,
I know a
yes,
lot
go
of
ahead,
people that go to Germany. The big thing with Germany, though, is that you have to know German before you can go to the country.
But the education is free.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
In Germany, the education is free.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be practicing my German.
Yeah.
I mean, at the degree level is German, but if you go at the master's level, it's actually English.
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah. Correct.
So
So they reward you.
Yeah.
they do,
masters.
and it's still free.
Jeez.
Which is amazing. But I just thought it was interesting because it really further instills this trend, right? The importance of education and the value. So up until that point, up until university, the parents are paying, right? High school, but they're not just paying the home; they're paying for tuition. Did you do tutoring when you were?
But that is sorry to cut you off, but that is a passion game or a survival game? Do you think?
I don't think it's a survival game because I don't think because I know not okay. By the way, not every Indian parent is like this. Let me say that.
We were talking about majority.
Yes, which is why I'm saying it's a passion game because I know plenty of Indian people that aren't super academic. That's not what their focus was. Their parents never pushed that, and they still end up fine. Oftentimes, they're either when I say average, I mean they're in the median of the population doing median kind of work, or even slightly above, just because of unconsciously there's still biases that put you a bit ahead.
Oh,
do you know Russell Peters?
Yes, love Russell Peters.
So, legend.
So, I'm referring to him as a reference. It might not be the most appropriate things, but he makes jokes about this. That what type of passion is that? Is it the passion to show off, or is it the passion that I see my child is happy and successful in whatever they're doing?
Yeah, I think we know the answer. I mean, you mentioned it just before.
Yeah,
it absolutely. I think it's a show off.
And look, the reason I'm going to the next question on that is that, I mean, probably I should let you go through your question and the more stats, because there are more critical questions just ticking off at the moment. Because I sort of came through that process, living in a country that sort of similar education system, really high numbers, and then through them, migration, and then opened up suddenly to a different education system and working system and culture and life balance and all that. So, yeah. Probably go ahead with those stats, and then I'll
keep going.
Yeah,
okay, sure. But yeah, so okay. Well, before I go ahead, I just want to close off. Was it about education? Because we're going to move into business now. So if it was about education, then why don't you?
It is related to the business and education, because it's now so you can't really separate them.
Because of the next phase.
It goes hand in hand.
It goes hand in hand. Yeah.
Yeah, but when I talk about business, the really interesting thing to me is that, again, I don't know a lot of Indian students, whether it's friends that I know or international. There's almost no international students. No one does this Bachelor of Business. I don't know anyone that studies non-STEM. I know there's a couple of people, but
You're right, actually.
A lot of non-STEM people. Bachelor of Business is a very, like, I've seen a lot of like people that live here, like Aussies do it. People that have grown up here. I know a lot of Americans love business.
A lot of Chinese international students do it.
Yes, a lot of there you go. But not a lot of Indian people just go out and study Bachelor of Business. They'll always go into a STEM subject, a technical subject.
Yeah.
But then
They can turn
here
into
are
a
these
business.
statistics, right? So, well, the big one, and I'm sure this is very common, 30% of Fortune 500 companies have an Indian CEO.
How many?
30.
30%.
Is that global?
Global.
30%,
But then,
okay.
so I checked to make sure, and India has 17.6% of the world's population. So even if you normalize the population, it's still double almost, right? Which is really interesting. And then I went more into look into, like, this is Fortune 500, right? Okay, what about the bottom of the list? So Fortune 500 is big companies.
Yeah.
What about startups, right? So even more interesting. 29% of unicorn startups. You know what a unicorn startup is? It's 1 billion.
Yeah.
Okay, so 29%, which is 67 out of 233 in the US, unicorn startups, was founded by an Indian American. 29%. Do you know what the Indian American population is of America? It's 1.2%. That's crazy.
That is massive.
1.2% of the population.
But then again, like
America.
America's population is quite extensive as well. What is it, like 200 something?
300 million.
300
350 million?
So
So that's like 30 million.
there's a question here. So CEOs,
3 million.
I can get it. How many of these companies, the founders are Indians?
No, that's what I'm saying. Founders. 29%.
Oh, the
67,
startup founders.
the
But
startup
then
founders.
obviously the Fortune 500s are going to have founders that are but
course.
have now,
Yeah.
like the CEOs are
Because
of Indian origin.
that's a different story.
Yes.
Because the founding and the CEO,
Yes.
two separate stories.
So I think it's the new age of Indians and Indian Americans
are becoming founders.
are becoming founders, whereas the sort of not old, but like, what generation do you call them? Do you
Gen
millennials?
X.
No, before that.
Before Gen X is baby boomers.
Okay, so the baby boomers,
yeah.
they're the ones that are at that stage where they're not the founders, but they've
I
built
think-
themselves
I
up
think it's
to.
Gen X that are like, Gen X is like 50 years old.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
Gen X
so
is 50.
yeah, so like the Gen X that
Yeah.
are now getting to CEO levels, they're
Yes.
getting to vice president levels. They're getting to really high levels of leadership within billion-dollar companies.
Yeah. Now this is all great, right? But and I never play the victim card. Okay, I really think there's equal opportunity here for everyone. But big but here. When I see numbers like that, and then some, like, I don't know if you saw last year, there was I think it was a lawsuit or a review done on US universities having a higher score for Asian Americans to get into medicine that they needed compared to just like non-Asian Americans.
Is it because of the volume of people that were going?
No, it's because if everyone kept everyone at the same level, all of them
all
would
of
be
the
Asian.
Asians and Southeast Asians.
Yeah. So I think it was a lawsuit where it was discrimination.
Yeah.
Because like
course.
they wanted they wanted to look more even.
Yeah.
So they bumped up the standard for Asians.
Wow.
And so if this is happening there, then and I see these stats like this, which make me think, if I'm working at like a big company, or even just like if I'm in front of a VC, as in a venture capitalist or just an investor or a bank or whatever, and I'm Indian, I wonder if there's some kind of unconscious bias to like, I don't want to add to the stat, like a glass ceiling almost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like let's make the top level more diverse. So we're going to make it a bit harder for you if you're Indian to actually get there. This is like, again, I'm not trying to play the victim card. It's just that ultimately human behavior at a large level, envy is a human behavior. And it's something that I'm thinking about.
I think
If that makes sense.
That sort of politics runs in any company and in any area against everyone. There's like, and that's what like it To be honest, and I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, I hate the fact that there's so many different like quotas that companies fill. All right, so there's a ethnicity quota, there's a gender neutral quota, and then there's this quota. I'm like, just treat them based on their merits.
Just swear. That's good.
I'm just I apologize, but I'm just like just treat them off their merit. Don't be like, okay, I need to fit this agenda. I need to fit it. Like it genuinely infuriates me.
Yeah.
Like just treat people on their individual merits.
Yeah.
Don't discriminate or don't prioritize, because like I've seen people in such high places, but because they got there because they were the ones that were going to meet the quota, the company was going to fulfill the quota, but then so many people missed out because the quota was full.
Yeah.
You're like, why?
It's interesting. I see the point, and like I agree. Recently I found there's some exceptions to the rule. Things like having a panel of judges, for example. If I'm organizing an event for like something for engineering, and there's a panel of judges I need, and that's going to be broadcasted to the public, and kids are going to see it, and like young engineers are going to see it, people at universities are going to see it. Even though, yes, it's not an equal representation of men and women in real life, in industry, I want to strive, and I get why people push to want to strive that panel to have an equal distribution.
Yeah.
Because if I'm a female engineer and I see an all-male board, or if I'm a female student, then you want the industry to look appealing, and show that everyone is seen and everyone is heard and everyone is welcome. Which, see, there's the exception to the rule. But when you start picking and employing people because of a quota, I think when you artificially try to do anything, like you can't try to
stuffs everything
solve
up.
a problem like that.
Exactly.
Look, coming back to what you were talking about, the envy and stuff that you were talking about. This is, and I've been thinking about it a lot actually. And this is based on the personal experience. And I know at the moment there is a huge fight about, white supremacy and all of that. They're trying to corner the white people, literally, for whatever reason. Okay. And I'm saying it from a perspective that I have faced racism in the past. So yes, it does exist, but I've seen racism of non-white people against other people or against white people as well. Okay, so I came out of the individual's game.
Yep.
Okay. My experience, at least from what I've seen within Australia, and I've been living here for enough, a good portion of my adult life, probably all of my adult life, all of that. The system, which is more important, the system is based on the values that is very human based. So it's not race based. And it's, yes, there are within the systems there are people may actually act differently. But my experience is like, no, they, compared to what I've seen in other countries, which I'm not going to say where did I live and where did I, have all those experiences. They seemed from outside that they shouldn't be racist, but the systems were racist, okay? And it create a lot of discriminations.
Yeah.
What we have here as a system, and again, I'm not saying that there are no shortcomings or it's absolutely perfect and everything, but compared to what I've seen, it's way developed.
Yeah.
And it is an argument that Elon Musk actually makes, which I really love, about the systems wars and games, about the sort of like if they want to actually handpick people and then have a superiority or have a game power. It's his analogy, which I used before as well. So after the Second World War, US had the opportunity to take over many countries.
Yeah.
Okay. They had the atomic bombs. They had the willpower. They had the military behind them. They had the economic power. And they could rule the entire world. I mean, if you look at, I'm Persian, so I can actually say it. Persians did have a power and they did rule the entire world.
Yeah.
Okay. Americans didn't do it. Americans went to Europe, let them free, came out, and then helped Europeans actually build Europe. Yes, they did bomb Japan, but they didn't conquer Japan. Japan became one of the most thriving economics and the democracies after the Second World War. So that is my analogy towards that, and towards what you said about the envy. I think, and I totally get it. What we have here in the West, what is actually practiced in the West, is a different value system than what's happening in other countries. And the reason that those Indians are successful, in my opinion, is that they could catch the value system that is played in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
And they adopted.
They adopted.
Mm.
Okay. Mm. And the value system that exists in the West is not just based on the winning the numbers.
Yeah. Well, it's really okay. So I don't know if you saw my next
no, I didn't cheat. Okay.
But what you said, I have the math to back you up, and this shocked me. And this is gonna make India look a little bit worse than the pedestal I've put it in right now. And it speaks to those individual contributions compared to society. Like we discussed, at a societal level, there's things Indians do, especially Indians that have left India, that helps them succeed, right? But on an individual level, the statistic is for the UHNIs. Now there's a new acronym for you to learn. It's called Ultra High Worth Net Individual.
Oh yeah.
And relative contribution essentially means what percentage of their income they give away essentially.
Oh, it's charities.
To charities. Okay. And so for Indian ultra high net worth individuals, relative contribution is between 0.1 to 0.15% of their income.
What is the benchmark compared to other?
I'll tell you.
All right.
The US, it's 1.2 to 2.5%. That you're looking at between almost 20 times. So Indian ultra high net worth individuals give away almost 20 times less than US ultra high net worth individuals. And
that tells a lot of a story.
It tells a lot because it shows, what we were talking before about why Indian parents want their kids to be so, it's to show off, right?
Exactly.
And you can't show off if you give your money away. But again, this is at a societal level. There are individuals in India. I know there's some billionaires that give all their money away, right? There is unicorns, but as a general,
it offsets it.
Yeah.
You build it up to here, and then you suddenly scratch everything.
No. This is again. This is not.
Look, it's a mindset.
It's interesting. Yeah.
It's an interesting.
But I see what you mean. I mean, that's what you were saying when you said the US gave back.
Yeah.
I mean,
because again, you have to think about it. And there's so many stories with there's ultra high net worth individuals and just even everyday individuals, and I'm comparing all of them across the spectrum. Is for I think Asian, Southeast Asian, those sort of, and the ethnic individuals and the ethnic people, we want to keep our money for our people and for our family. And it's not even for our people, it's for our family. So we're all right, I'm just going to keep everything here. I'm going to give, but I'm going to give very little and just make sure that, my family and my offspring. Exactly. It's my offsprings and my legacy can just keep flourishing. Whereas you look at other ethnicities and other things where, especially in the Western, they're okay, yeah, I'll donate a lot by all means. And then he was like, you look at Warren Buffett and he goes, okay. And Bill Gates, when I die, all my net worth, like a small portion gets left to my family, but 98% of it gets donated. And then it's just a drastic, it's a drastic difference.
It's interesting as well. Like there's a lot of psychology that speaks to the fact that the more you give, the happier you are in life as well. And
when are we ever happy?
the more you give, also the more you gain.
Yes.
Because the more you give, you have more capacity.
Correct.
Yeah.
To build the relationships.
That's true.
Okay. And that is what I was talking about, the mindset. Look, again, you have to quote, you have to check these quotes, but I think it was Winston Churchill during the Second World War. Again, you have to double check it. If you could check it, that would be perfect because it's an important quote. I think they have cut back the art budget during the World War. Okay. And then he went back and fought and said, if you're cutting back the art, then what the fuck are you even fighting for? Okay. Because that is a metaphor of that's how it shapes the values within the society. Okay.
Yeah.
And look, I agree that, for the last few decades, probably the West gave up on the technical part. But, mostly, and it's sort of like a hidden war at the moment that we are in, and it needs a balance. But those things are important.
I think so.
It creates it's a balance. It's a yin yang. It's a sort of like a left and right side of your brain that it needs that emotional and logical balance. If you create that imbalance, then what is life for? Seriously. So
too much of anything is a bad thing.
Too much of anything is a bad thing. Yeah. Either side.
Yeah.
But I wonder why, like you said, there is no middle ground. Like, why is it that there's no country where everything is just perfect? And
it's because humans don't. Humans take a long time, and we're still like, if you really look at it, like the human race is still quite young compared to the world and compared to things, and again, I think it's purely the fact that as our species evolves, develops, we need so much of the population to just accept the fact that not everyone's going to be happy, and just accept the fact that there has to be a balance in something. But it's impossible. Our population is growing so rapidly, and you're getting there is so much propaganda and indoctrination from when you're growing up, and you get told so many different things, and you're not allowed to develop your own thoughts in one area, and then another area you're allowed to be too free. It's just a clash because one side wants to have complete power over everyone. The other side wants to have power over the individual and empower the individual themselves. I definitely think if you bring both of them together, within the next couple of 100 years, the human species is going to be in such a good place. And it's going to excel really well. But humans are greedy. You can never make humans happy.
Some greeds are good.
Some are good.
As long as it pushes you in a way that's... every emotion, I believe, in humans, to a certain extent, is valuable. But then if there's no balance between all the emotions,
there has to be regulation.
Then there is a reason that people get angry. Anger is not bad. Okay, if it's sort of like a defensive mechanism that sometimes you need it. But then how you manage the anger and how you act upon it is important. The greed, I think it's okay to demand for a comfortable life. Not a luxury life, but a comfortable life. Okay, I think it's natural. I think it's healthy. It's needed, But then if you're fighting to get the money, to get the luxury, to show off, then that's sick.
Yeah. An analogy just came into my head, and I want you guys to excuse my analogies because they can get quite out there.
Yeah.
But this goes to medicine, right? And it's something that like the longest time I've realized it now, but and it's a comparison between some Western countries and then actually let's put it in regards to a communist society and then a society where it's more like democracy. The communist aspect of it is like we're just going to keep giving you medicine to cover up everything and then you just push through. Whereas some of the Western sides is like, okay, you just have to, you have freedom to do whatever you want, deal with it. If there was a perfect mold of it where it's like, okay, you give the medicine for the pain, but you teach the person to do things to get rid of that issue. But then, sort of why that sort of came into my head was then you look in Western countries, and especially it's because of the money. They don't teach you how to get rid of the problem. They just give you medicine. You go there, you're like, all right, this is the issue. Look, here's antibiotics. Here's more antibiotics. All right, this is hurting. Have some Panadol. Have some Nurofen. Like, but you're not telling me how to resolve the issue. You're just telling me to take medicine. Whereas in like, say, back in the day, it was more, okay, how do we resolve this issue? And you see those like old school traditional healing methods. I found there was one weird one where I remember I was very sick and my mum strapped onions to the bottom of my feet because she was like, the onion will absorb all of the negative energy that's within you and all of the pain. And there was another one where it was like eggs, where the egg absorbs it and the egg goes from being just like a standard hard-boiled egg to becoming concrete. And apparently the reason it became concrete was because it absorbed all of that negative.
Wow.
It's like, so I go to a doctor and they tell me have some Panadol, and then you're going to strap a whole onion to my leg and be like, that's
There's no middle ground.
There's no middle ground. So that's why
Such a contradiction.
it is, and people are going to hate me for this, but that's why I love both democratic and communist countries, but because I pick and choose what's good about them. And
Look, I think what you're explaining is not a communist; it's social,
I was gonna say the same thing.
social based. So like,
yeah,
things, something that Australia is pretty much down that path if you look at it. So we have a very strong social service.
Yeah.
But also, if you want to do a business, you're free to do it.
Yeah.
But you need to, if you earn good money, then you have to support the people who are in demand and are in need. And so like someone was telling me about the Centrelink story, which was a really beautiful story because it was like they have realized that some people within the society at some point in life they just can't work.
Yeah.
Okay, and then sort of say, okay, until it's pick up the work, then we're gonna have to support it.
Yeah.
Okay, and of course some people will come across and rob it and try to abuse it, but from an ideological perspective, I mean, that's where I want to live. I mean, that's why I'm really proud to be Australian. It's because it got to this maturity level that the life it created a balanced life. I mean, again, could be much better, but compared to other places,
It's a lot better.
It is a lot better, and there are a lot of lessons learned within that, and people are still adopting. But again, coming back to the point, is about the values in life. And it's really important because Jung says that your personality shapes by the age of 7.
Okay.
So after that, you're just all
It's a long time ago.
you're all set.
Yeah.
Okay, so it requires a lot of work if you I mean, you put an example of Indians who go through that system and then migrate and all that. It requires a lot of work to rewire your brain because you're already shaped by the age of 7. Okay, so you need to go and back into the childhood. You can work that up, and build us up to like rethink. And it's a difficult job. It's not easy. Not everyone is capable of it.
Yeah, it's amazing that if this like knowledge is out there, and it's obviously could be true, we don't put more emphasis on good parenting. Like, why is that not?
It's hard. It's very hard to do. And going back to that one episode that we did where it's like sometimes pushing against the wind. So people just don't want to do that because it's very painful. And I've seen examples of it where, like, again, you need a balance because sometimes what happens is parents will say, okay, I want to give my kids everything I didn't have. And then somehow the kid turned out really spoiled because they got everything that the parents didn't have. Whereas then you've obviously got kids that don't get what they want, and then their personality is shaped because of that as well. And they're very, they're very tough. But that really, like what you just said, I don't know, it clicked into my head something where, like, I think that's the reason why a lot of people face, and this is going to now tie into like the mental health thing, where a lot of people face those sort of issues. It's not the fact that they have these issues as an adult. It spawns from the trauma that they've had from a child. And the reason why they, we can develop as much as we want, but if it is the fact that, by 7, our personality is shaped by that, we need to have such a great, 0 to 7 years of life for us to not be affected and for us to not have a lot of issues internally. Whereas I think a lot of us, if we've faced anything in that age, then we can try and cover it up, but it will still be within us. And then I think,
even if you don't remember it.
Yeah, I think even if you don't remember it, the consequence of it is still ingrained within you.
Yeah.
Where like that clicks into my head where, like, I've seen a lot of things here and there where it goes, especially with a partnership, it goes, all right, try and heal the inner child within your partner, or even like within a friendship or just whatever. It's like, just try and be aware of that. I think as I think for us moving forward, like our generation, it's a big thing that we have to keep in mind with our kids is, okay, be harsh, but have that level of, okay, from 0 to 7, let's really be strategic about how we grow up.
Do you find anything, like, you said all of this very vague, and like if you're open to it, I can share mine. Have you ever reflected on what's your like weakness psychologically? What is it that you crave or like were missing? And like for myself, I think recently as well, I've noticed that I've reflected on my behavior and it's seeking validation. And that was the big thing that I think I missed out on, which was like receiving validation that like I was good enough.
Yeah.
And then I see myself seeking validation from people around me. Like even with this podcast, like seeing the public reaction to it, and it makes me happy. But I'm very aware that it makes me happy, and I'm like, it's interesting that this is so pleasing to me, because then I'm like, oh, the opposite could also be true.
Yeah.
If someone leaves a really bad comment, like, damn, I think I would be really affected by that because I care so much, and it's like thinking about even from my like managers at work or like people like superiors my whole life. It's just like I wanted to please and I wanted to get validation that that you did a good job, Bijin, you know. And that's kind of my crux that I've kind of reflected on myself for.
Is that because from a young age you didn't get a lot of validation?
I think my thing is very common for a lot of Indian like kids, and I think it's that they were never impressed. Like nothing
you could always
did
do
was
better.
good enough. Yeah.
It's that game of number, I think.
Yeah. No, I think this is the personal thing, because I know parents that didn't push like that.
Yeah.
Where especially here, I think parents here do a really good job of maybe too much.
It is, yeah.
But
Pull back a little bit.
of like making sure their kid feels that they are good enough and
they're being seen and recognized for the efforts they put in.
Whereas myself, I think maybe it wasn't as much. I mean, but like, don't get me wrong. Now they're very proud of me and they like speak a lot very highly of me to everyone. But hey, I'm not 7 anymore, am I?
So it's still ingrained within you.
Exactly. Yeah. And but look, once you're conscious of it, it's something that, although because it's like a instinct, you kind of catch yourself either while you're doing it or afterwards.
Yeah.
But you do catch yourself. And again, it's just because, you're set this way, it doesn't mean you can't be rewired. It just takes a lot of work.
Long time.
Yes. Yeah. But I'm on the journey, Yeah. I read a really good book called The Courage to be Disliked. I think I mentioned this previously. That's really helped.
For some reason, something just came into my head with the way you said it. And applying it back to being 7. Say you're baking a cake and the ingredients are all there and you can improve it. So if you're missing one crucial step, or say one of the foundational ingredients was a little bit off, I feel like we can try our hardest. And this is going to sound very like glass half empty sort of perspective, but I feel like we can put as much fondant on it and we can put as much whipped cream and decorations on it. But I think, and it's very crucial because obviously from that young age, that's our brain is literally growing and creating those neural pathways and developing in that way, where I think we can manage it, but we can never get rid of it. We can never replace it.
Yeah.
It'll still be there.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I don't know how this happened, but on the way here, while I was writing here, I had a thought about something which was so similar, and I didn't even know we were going to talk about this because not what's in the script. Yeah. But it's another analogy for the same thing, and it goes because I'm an engineer, right? So I've done a lot of CAD work. So when you're making a CAD model, it's like it's an assembly. Like if I'm making this in CAD, I'll make each screw, each mount, the wire, the mic, everything's separate parts, and then you put it all together at the end, right? But sometimes you got to be really careful in the initial part of it because when you're making each part, you got to make sure the dimensions are right. You got to make sure everything's constrained.
Fits with one another.
Yeah, correct, right? But it's so easy sometimes, I'll be even like this whole thing, but like this ring here, I will mess up, some like the angle here or something, and it'll mean that something's broken in the CAD very early on. Yeah. But it's not a huge deal. You can't even tell the difference. So you just ignore it. You keep going, and then you get to the end, and this like whole thing is almost ready, and then everything just breaks. Have you had that before? I mean, you do CAD as well. Yeah.
So then you just put some super glue on.
There is a.
But it's like I was thinking about it. It's like when you're going through that developmental phase, and I don't know what it is, but like something goes wrong. It could take 20 years before it shows up again. And then you're like, whoa, what is this? Yeah. Where does this come from? Like, yeah.
Look, it goes back to the... Okay, so have you ever thought why successful entrepreneurs wear same clothes every day or similar clothes?
Isn't it to limit their time spent thinking?
It's because we have that, and also we have limited decision-making efficiency during the day. So
why waste it on clothes?
Why waste it on clothes? I think the most efficient person, the most genius person is like 20 decisions a day. If you're the super genius one. Yeah. And then most average people is like 6 to 10 max. Okay. An ordinary person is like probably between 3 to 5.
I think those are important decisions.
Yeah.
But useless decisions are probably like compared to the...
I'm talking about like I'm going to work.
Yeah.
Then which routes I'm gonna take.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a decision.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and a lot of decisions, for instance, when you're driving, is coming from the subconscious. Okay, so that is not your conscious making decisions. It's your subconscious. Why did you close it? We have a lot of things to do. So, and the subconscious is about what happens in your past, including your childhood, who you are at the moment as a person shapes your subconscious, the environment, the parents, the friends, the family, and all those partners and else, because it's just there and it becomes the habit.
Yep.
Okay. So part of that awakening the inner child, rewiring the brain, all of that is how to change those habits to get to the level that change the subconscious. Because what you said about it takes 20 years sometimes is because people are just not aware of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And people mostly are not even aware of the fact that why they're making these decisions. Okay.
Yeah.
It's about self-study.
And it's not something that's pushed.
It is not pushed in the systems that we grew up.
Yeah.
But if we go to the Australian system, education system, it's much aware of these things. Especially at the...
Well, I mean, I grew up here, right? Like,
Yeah.
I would say, I know what you're referring to. I mean, in high school, we had journals and we had teachers. I would say it's not pushed at the right time because I didn't care then. You know what I mean? Like, I was fine. I didn't care about anything growing up. But it's almost when you're a young adult and you're like post-adolescence, when you're in your 20s, figuring out what is
And
the
life
rest of
hits
my
you.
life. Life hits you.
Yeah.
That's when you actually need it.
Because it's a ticking time bomb. It's like there's that. It's just sitting there, waiting for that one
trigger.
And when we're adolescents, we don't care. We're full of hormones. We're full of just idiotic mindsets. We're just like, oh, I'm just gonna live life. I'm invincible.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay up till 3 a.m. I'm gonna wake up at 5. Life is good. I don't care. And then as soon as you become a young adult, you're like, I've got responsibilities. Life expects things from me. I'm not going to get things for free.
I'm going to fall behind.
Exactly. And then that's when it just pushes that button.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, the reason I'm saying is it's a good education here to teach that. Because after a certain age, it is difficult to teach people these concepts.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it bluntly. A lot of engineers come from Iran, for instance. Okay, they come outside after the degree. Okay, they come for a master's degree and they stay here and then go to the work.
Yeah,
I'm born there, so I can criticize that. I don't care if they pay no backlash to it. They're all set in their mindset.
Yeah,
and it's very egoistic. Okay, which then stops the collaboration, stops the change. It's all formed.
Yeah.
They're just so rigid in that. Even though I don't believe it, I think it's wrong. Okay. And it does not help to move forward.
Yeah.
It does not help the innovation. And it's very funny. A few years ago, there was this professor with Iranian background who apparently has an influence in shaping the education system after the revolution in Iran. And he was, proud that, Iranians know about, they're really good at math and all those things. And, he was downgrading the Australian system that, people kind of come out of the high school, don't know about the math, or that it's not that level of high level math. And then I was just like, what an absolute crap. Seriously. Because if the students know why they're studying it, they'll be good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Most of the students who go through that education system in Iran is like, why the fuck am I studying this?
Yeah.
What is this? Why am I spending my life to learn this when it's gonna come handy to me? Okay. And then by the time they learn it, they're just so set because they already invested in it.
Yeah.
And it's such a wasted energy because they're like, where am I gonna apply this?
Oh, you know what? That's so true. I was speaking to my cousins I told you live here, right?
Yeah.
And I'm talking to them about what they studied in high school, and okay, they did physics in high school, and I'm asking them what level of physics you did, like what did you learn about, and I'm comparing, and the physics they learned in like year 11 is the physics I learned in second year uni, and I'm like, great, but you're becoming a nurse. Like, what a waste of time and energy that you put into that.
Yeah. Correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
So it's like, yeah, I see what you mean by the system here. Look, I had one more statistic, and I'm running out of time, and this is the big one. Okay.
Cool.
So let's talk about it. Obviously, I want to recall some things into your mind, right? So we learned today that we have 1 million abroad Indian international students.
Yep.
Right. Soon to be 1.5 to 2.
Yeah.
And that's about right now $36 billion a year on university fees that Indian students are paying, right?
And close to catch up to the defense
Yes,
budget. Yeah.
almost to go to. And what is the defense budget? $76 billion. It was in 2021. Okay. Now, do you know what remittance is?
Yeah, sending money abroad.
Sending money abroad. Do you know who the number one country is at remittance?
India.
India. Do you know how much? $125 billion a year.
So almost double of the money that they spend is sent back.
Yeah. So imagine that. So India could pay for its defense budget with just half the money that Indian people outside of India send back to the country.
Jeez.
Isn't that insane?
That is ridiculous.
I don't know what that's supposed to prove. Like, what kind of behavior? I don't even know. Like, why? His family. Like, I guess family.
It's family. It's the family bond.
Yeah.
Because again, when you really reflect and you change between the two societies, I remember in high school, kids from their dream was, as soon as I turn 18, I'm going to move out. I'm looking at them like, you're an idiot. My dad would slap the shit out of me if I said I'm going to move out. Like, what? And they go, yeah, no, it's so good. Like, I'm going to go live here. I'm going to do this. I'm like, okay, that's good. But then the ethnic side of me, I'm like, you're paying somebody else's mortgage.
Sure.
You're not going to be living with your family. You're going to be, and like so many people and again, it's not to stereotype it, but it's from what I've seen, Australian kids. And Australian, I mean white Australians. They're just like, yeah, no, I don't want to live with my parents. I'm sick and tired of them telling me what to do and them controlling my life and hey, this and that. And then
you think they're controlling? Come to my house.
I tell my parents I'm depressed. They're like, "What's depression? Go read a book.
Hours I work.
Go read a book." And then for you can swear at your parents. I can't even talk back to my parents. Yeah. Like I do that. That's disrespectful. And I remember this one kid was like, "Mom," and I was playing COD back there. And the mom's like, "Oh, come have food." And he goes, "Shut up, Mom." I'm like, what did you just do? You're gonna get your ass whooped. And he goes, what are you talking about? Like if I don't listen to my parents, let alone tell them to shut up,
oh man,
I'm not gonna exist anymore.
Yeah, no.
And then it's just that mindset. They're like, I'm all right, as soon as I turn 18, done. Whereas with a lot of the ethnics, they're just like, okay, till I die.
Yeah.
We are together. And even like
that thing they say, it's like an ethnic meme, and it's when you're living with your parents, you don't pay with money, you pay with your mental health.
That is so true.
I feel like we're going towards Russell Peters now.
It's true.
Yeah. But like one thing that sounded so beautiful that I heard from like my dad not long ago, and that was especially after I was made redundant and whatnot, and even like he quoted it as well. I remember I was just like, oh, I have, he asked me, he goes, have you serviced your car? I'm like, I can't be bothered. I don't want to spend the money for that. And he goes, why not? I'm like, because I don't want to be putting money that I have. I don't want to touch my savings, and I don't want to put just random money towards the car. I'm like, the car will keep running. And he goes, you do know that everyone's money here, like your money is our money, my money is your money. Our financials is all shared. He goes, it's never you by yourself. Whereas I find with a lot of like, parents the bank of mum and dad will like give you money, but it's never shared. It's always, this is yours, this is mine. And I was so taken aback by it because growing up here, I was like, okay, this is my money, and that my parents' money is their money, and I have to help, and I pay them. And he goes, any bill that we pay is paid by the family, not by you and as an individual. So if you ever need anything, you have the pool of resources to work with. And I think that's why. It's really the fact that like we are so like it's within our DNA, it's within our culture of like you're gonna be with family for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And even
that's interesting. I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But I would think of it slightly differently, which is that it's similar but different in the fact that when I have kids, and they can hold me to this when they watch this back.
Come on, Bijin Jr. Watch.
We're keeping this.
It's like when I have kids, that child is my responsibility until they leave my house.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't ever want to go to my kid and complain how hard it is to pay for them because I chose to have you. Therefore, it is my responsibility to make sure you are clothed and fed, you have everything that you need until you leave the house. That is my responsibility.
But then it's that thing that gets instilled with them, and for them to have that obligation to be like, that my parents don't expect it from me.
Yeah.
But now the fact that I have the means to do so, I will support them.
But this is where we differ, right? I would not. No, I'm not saying anything with parents or anything, but like for me personally, it's like if they were to give me money, I would put it aside and give it back to them when they leave. Because like I don't. It's not that I don't need your money. It's that I was like God has blessed me to be able to be like have enough money to raise you.
Yeah.
And I believe that I will. That's fine. But to the point where I don't need any of your money, and I want you to have that for yourself. If you want to give me money, I would rather you save it yourself, you know, and use it on yourself because until you leave the house, you're my responsibility.
Yeah, I think, and that's with my parents. Is like anything that I've ever contributed to them.
Yes,
my mom's always been like, whatever you've ever contributed towards us.
Yeah,
I've actually kept it aside. So you if you ever like you go, oh, I've paid for this bill. He goes, yeah, but whatever you paid, I just kept it aside.
Exactly.
And whenever you need it, here you go.
Exactly. And
it's
a great system. It's a great and that community focused system.
That's the best.
Yeah, it lasts. Generational wealth, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's getting more and more airtime now, generational wealth and the idea of like because I think people are realizing now it's like single income, you know.
So, like if my dad had a lot of founded like wealth to push on,
look,
sure.
But there is this challenges because if you don't face challenges, then you don't really grow.
Yeah.
And challenge comes with the responsibility because people cannot, if they put you through the challenge, it's not worth it because it's a pain. But if you go face your own challenge, then you're dealing with your own fate.
But you have to become someone that looks at a challenge and goes, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I want to face it.
That's why the education is important. That's why the wiring is important because that click needs to happen much earlier in someone's life to say, okay, that's my challenge for life, and I'm going for it. Okay, and I pay for it. And part of the I love parents and I love being around them and live with them possibly, but I didn't have any challenge with them. You know, I was a quiet person, but I was a rebellious one at the same time because I did what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And
they couldn't do anything about it. But they tried really hard, but I played the game. What I'm talking about is it depends that do you let your parents actually define the path that you're gonna choose, or you're gonna choose the path that you wanna go on? Okay. Yeah. And I go back to this it's really statistics based. Look at the US. US has been for the last century the prominent country that leads the technology and science and all that.
Yeah.
And it is based on the freedom, not the communism, but the freedom. Okay, it's rough, it's tough. I may not agree or like everything about it, but hey, it shows an evidence of how you go through that process and how you can grow. Okay, maybe we need to rethink about how we can optimize that type of mentality, all of that. But coming back to this point, if you limit yourself, you never grow. If you don't go to the path to face the challenge personally, you don't really grow. And that's, I think, that becomes part of a fear-based mentality that a lot of younger generation I see are facing. And look, the innovation is part of being fearless, to be able to experiment, okay? But not also experiment, but also, okay, I failed. How am I going to deal with that?
Yeah, interesting.
How am I going to stand up again and say, that's done? And look, if the family support exists there, that's a bonus.
Yeah.
That's a great thing. But again, it's personal experience. I think a lot of parents don't have that wisdom to be brave enough to let the child go. And the story of that, I mean, this is a metaphor that I use. This, if you look at the Batman movie, is it Batman? The last, in one of those senses that he's climbing up the tunnel that he...
The prison that he gets sent to.
Yes, correct.
By Bane, yep.
He tries and he tries with the ropes, holding him.
Yep. Because he's got the fear.
He's got the fear. As soon as he gets rid of the rope, he's like, that's it, and I'm gonna do it. He succeeds.
Yeah.
It's a very harsh example of it. But I think that's a reality of life, that we need to live life with fearless, and not in the sense that we go do crazy stuff, you not become drinking alcohol every day is not good. So that's experiment also, but I'm not encouraging that. I'm talking about the values that's in life matters. A lot of people these days don't get married.
Yeah.
It shows that they're running away from the responsibility because they have been scared of that.
Because it looks very daunting.
It is very daunting.
Yeah.
A lot of people this is typical. I think this is an observation from me as a male looking at the female population. So women, a female grew up in a parent's house. It's a comfortable life.
Yeah.
Okay, everything is paid, is perfect. How do you? I mean, if you're in early 20s as a male and you try to build a life, you can't create the same level of comfort for that female to get married. It's just impossible. So people
especially in this economy.
So that's how you lost the process. And it's again, look, it applies to all, most men as well. They leave house up until mid 30s, these days, which is just ridiculous to me, because then people have lost that. Okay, my parents are having this comfortable life, but they have tried hard for it to get to this level. They saved, they have had a strategy, they worked as a team to get to this level. But then younger generation are just lost that bit of the story, that how to sort of build a life like that. And you see that, then you see that, a lot of young single adults, which then leads to loneliness.
One of the reasons why, and it was on, I think, a podcast that I listened to, was, again, and you mentioned to it where it's for females, they're living in a house where everything's paid for. They've got that standard of living that's just, and of course, their dad's going to say, my little princess.
Yeah, correct.
They're going to treat them like a little princess. And someone has to be there to be equivalent of treating them like that or more. And yes, at this stage, I think it's one of the first times where an individual in their 20s, in their mid to late 20s, is not more successful than their parents were at that age.
Yep.
Because everything's more expensive. And the other thing is that women will always look for someone better than them, not for someone that's less than. And women are, and you love to see it. They are getting such great careers. They're building things for themselves. They're building such immense success. But the downside of that is, for men, we're going in the opposite direction. Where we're not able to sort of meet those quotas. We're not able to reach that success. So women will look around, and there's a very small pool of people that they're willing to settle with, and there's all the other majority of the men that are at this stage. And I think there was one statistic that they mentioned was, in this day and age, it takes 200 swipes to, especially on like Tinder and Hinge and all that shit. It takes 200 swipes to get even one connection to ask somebody to go a coffee. And out of those, but then out of 5, only one will show up for that coffee.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So 5 people commit to going to a coffee date with you. Only one will show up, but it took 200 swipes per 200 swipes it took to get one person. So out of 1,000 swipes, you get one coffee date.
Wow.
And that's why people have to, especially for men, it's that loneliness that comes up.
Look, it's been a really heavy episode.
It is. We've jumped so many topics.
Just to drag it back to the initial topic that
Yes, that's a
we
good
were
idea.
discussing. Men in today's life needs to be adapting themselves much more because it's just a different environment.
Yeah.
Okay. And men need to learn different skills.
Yep.
Okay. And that's what intrigued me, because yes, these engineering fields, tech and business and everything is great. Okay. But we need to learn about, so men are long-term planners. We are not short-term. We think strategically. Okay. But then we need to be able to actually learn to actually think short-term as well, which requires a lot of adaptability, flexibility, and all of that. Okay. It's good to have these skills, engineering skills, logical skills. Okay. But it has to be in a sense that it has to be a balance between the softer skill that men need to learn as well. Okay. And that's why I think that education system probably not perfect for men, because men need to learn about how to work with each other as well.
Yeah. It's not
how not to compete all the time. Okay. We need to learn to build things, especially for the last 30 years with disruption of the manufacturing going away from our societies. Men are also like, what are we here for?
We've got nothing else to do.
We can nothing. And look, like on that point, have you seen the movie Dead Poet Society?
I haven't seen it. I've heard of it though.
No.
There is a quote in there, and it's beautiful. It says all these professions are, law, engineering, medicine, all these things are noble pursuits in life.
Yeah.
Okay. But without poetry, without love, without that vision for life, the values, it doesn't make sense. Those are the things that shapes the life. Okay. And then with the engineering, science, and everything, we can actually think of explain the reasons behind them.
Yeah.
I think that's what is missing.
That's interesting.
That we need to sort of encourage especially younger men, to come on board and talk about those things and learn about those things. I see a lot of people, younger men, think they're really macho and tough, but then they're actually really not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to close us off, I think initially the idea and the title of the podcast was the Indian effect, right?
Yeah.
And what I called the Indian effect is this idea of someone coming from an Eastern society, growing up, and then coming and thriving in a Western society, and that's what I'm calling it, just so that you can reference it for the future.
Yes.
And what exactly caused that success? And I think we talked about some statistics, talked about some reasons, and I think we had a really good discussion. So I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Facilitating,
thank you
this discussion.
for bringing that. It was definitely a great topic.
Yeah.
And yeah, we did jump around into many different areas, and
we wanted to show the relationships because now people will be curious to go and know about trends, about the cultural trends more than anything.
It affects all of us.
It impacts everyone. Yeah,
exactly. Yes. So next week we have a guest as well, so it won't be us.
That would be exciting.
That'll be exciting.
That'll be very exciting. But yeah, I think
we're done.
Thank you, Bijin.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bijin. And thank you to all of our lovely listeners for taking the time out of your day to sit here or to, I guess, while you're driving, while you're at work, whatever you're doing. We hope you had a wonderful time listening to us have a bit of a discussion about many different things. And hopefully you learnt some wonderful things from our discussions. But yeah, we appreciate you listening.
Please follow and subscribe. It really, really, really helps us a lot. And let us know how we're doing if you have any feedback for us.
And look forward to next week's episode.